Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Financial Center for Sustainability Lagos webinar on the circular economy. We're really happy to have you here. I'm Andrew Nevin, partner at PwC Lagos, but also one of the founding governors of the Financial Center for Sustainability Lagos. We have a fantastic lineup today, and I think you're going to find this incredibly interesting about such a critical topic. The Financial Center for Sustainability Lagos was set up to help to drive a sustainable investment into the Nigerian and into the West African economy. But I think it's fair to say at this stage, we all understand that all investment in the 2020s is going to be sustainable investment. So it really plays a critical role in the development of Nigeria and the continent. To get us started today, I'd like to ask Coyote Ugochi, Ms. Coyote Ugochi, who is the group managing COO at the FMDQ. Of course, FMDQ is one of Nigeria's most critical institutions. It's everyone knows it as the fixed income exchange, playing an enormous role in the capital market development in Nigeria. Coyote's been a good friend for a number of years, but FMDQ is also playing a leadership role across the whole economy. It is the group that drove the formation of the Financial Center for Sustainability Lagos, and of course has among the coolest spaces in Nigeria, where we welcomed the UK Prime Minister Theresa May a few years back. So fantastic to have you, Coyote. Can I call on you, before I introduce the other speakers, I'm going to actually call on you to give our opening remarks. Coyote, do we have you there? Okay, we seem not to have Coyote. I hope she comes momentarily. We all understand the limitations of this kind of technology. So let's get into our session today. I think we all know the ground rules after 6 months of this kind of way of working together. We've got everyone on mute, but we're going to have a chance for questions. We have a Q&A box. We also have a chat box. If I'm looking away from the screen when I'm on the television, it's because I'm consulting the chat box or my notes and all of this, and I apologize for that. But please, we've got such an incredible lineup of speakers on this topic, and I think the questions are, oh, Coyote, you've joined us now. Coyote, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Good morning.
Please, Coyote, can you give us our opening remarks to start this this webinar today?
Yes, I can. Good morning, everyone. English ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us at this webinar today. I'm delighted to welcome you all to the second series of the Financial Center for Sustainability Lagos, FCFS Lagos webinar session, themed How Circular Economy Drives Sustainable Development. And this is being organized by FCFS in collaboration with PwC Nigeria. Sustainable development is based on three dimensions: well-being, three dimensions of well-being: economic, social, and environmental. And it seeks to promote sustainable use of natural resources, thus highlighting the need for the adoption of a circular economy towards the preservation of the planet. The concept of actualizing circularity will not only enable businesses to tap into new sources of value, but would help forge resilient markets and supply chains capable of delivering long-term sustainable prosperity. In recent years, the circular economy model has gained increasing prominence as a tool which presents solutions to some of the world's pressing cross-cutting sustainable development challenges. And by addressing these root causes, the concept of a circular economy, an economy in which waste and pollution do not exist by design, products and materials are kept in use, and natural systems are regenerated, promises to accelerate the implementation of the UN 2030 agenda. The UN has pointed out that the circular economy holds particular promise for achieving multiple sustainable development goals, including SDG 6, clean water and sanitation, 7, affordable and clean energy, 8, decent work and economic growth, 11, sustainable cities and communities, 13, climate change, 14, life above water, 15, life on land, and at the core of it, SDG 12, sustainable consumption and production. According to the European Commission, global consumption of materials such as biomass, fossil fuels, metals, and minerals is expected to double in the next 40 years, while annual waste generation is projected to increase by 70% by 2050. A report by the Circular Economy, a group supported by the United Nations Environment Programme and the Global Environment Facility, suggests that the global economy is currently only 9% circular of the world's 92.8 billion tons of resources. In essence, more than 90% of the raw materials used globally do not find their way back into the economy. In Nigeria, solid waste continues to remain the most pressing environmental challenge faced by urban and rural areas. Despite a host of policies and regulations, solid waste mismanagement in the country is assuming alarming proportions with each passing day. Nigeria, with a country of over 200 million people, is known to generate more than 32 million tons of solid waste annually, out of which only about 20 to 30% is collected. Such uncontrolled disposal of solid waste has led to blockage of sewers and drainage networks and choking of water bodies, amongst other challenges. It is also leading to increasing flooding and loss of human lives and property at the peak of rainy season across various states. Improper collection and disposal of municipal waste in Nigeria would gradually lead to an environmental catastrophe if not properly managed. According to the UN Habitat Watch, African city populations will have more than triple over the next 40 years. As African cities are already swamped with slums, this phenomenon could spell disaster unless immediate actions are initiated and executed. Our goal through this seminar is to sensitize and educate the manufacturing industry and other critical stakeholders within the financial and related sectors of the economy on the need to discontinue the time-worn linear economic model of take, make, and dispose, and switch to a circular model of take, make, recycle, and reuse. Once again, thank you for joining us on this webinar series and for your support towards the quest to ensure a more sustainable world. I enjoin you to pay attention to the team of subject matter experts who will be speaking today, and I'm certain that you will find the presentations and discussions insightful and engaging. Thank you and welcome to the seminar.
Thank you, Coyote. That's a very compelling words. I mean, I think you summed it up very. Sorry if I look at my notes, very compelling in terms of impending environmental catastrophe. I was particularly taken with listing out the SDGs that the circular economy thinking affects 6, 7, 8, 11, 13, 14, 12, and 12 at the heart, and 15 as well. We might as well just say it affects all the SDGs, which I think is the kind of thinking that we're trying to FC4S. Lagos is trying to put forward. In fact, GDP is an outdated model to think about the well-being of people. The SDGs are the right language, and the circular economy thinking is right at the heart of virtually every SDG. So thank you for that compelling opening remarks on this. As I said, we've got a fantastic lineup. Let me introduce the speakers and we'll get started. To begin with, we've got Miss Jessica Long. I think it's maybe easiest to say Jessica is the world's leading expert in the circular economy. She's just put out the Circular Economy Handbook, which of course tells you everything you need to know. She has global experience. We will supply everyone's bios later, but she also has African experience. Has spent a number of years living in Africa, knows the continent well, knows Nigeria there. So we're just delighted to have the global expert on the circular economy with us today. And then we have Ms. Aresa Onagishe, who is doing something that you may not have heard of, but is just so central to where we need to go in Nigeria. She's the executive secretary of the Food and Beverage Recycling Alliance. So this is the group that's trying to figure out And so much of the waste, the solid waste that we have is generated by the food and beverage manufacturers and the consumption of those products. And she's the one right at the top trying to figure out how we can fix this problem. And she works, of course, with all the global and large local companies involved in this sector. You may not have heard a lot about the Food and Beverage Recycling Alliance to date, but you're going to hear a lot more. And we're really lucky to have Arese tell us what's going on with that and playing such a critical role. We also have another great friend of Nigeria in Mr. Christian Wessels. He's been in the region for 15 years. Most recently, he's co-founded Daystar Power, which is a group that's really using hybrid solar solutions for commercial industrial customers. I'll let him tell the story, but it's very impressive what they're doing. One of the critical things with circular economy thinking is that everything, to the extent it can, happens in situ. He's bringing that to the power sector. And one of the most exciting things about Daystar is it's not just a Lagos or Abuja story, but it's a pan-Nigeria story, in fact, a pan-West African story. So Christian, we're just delighted to have you today. And then last but not least, we have my dear friend, I guess my brother from a different mother. We have Bankole, I never pronounce his last name, I just call him Bankole, so forgive me, I guess in here I have to, Bankole Olaruntoba, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigeria Climate Innovation Center. So this is a group, it's centered at Lagos Business School, where World Bank helps out on them, but they're really driving the climate agenda, climate innovation agenda in Nigeria. And Bankole, I'm sure many of you know him already, has done many, many things over the years, including in 2018, he was part of the President's Advisory Council on Technology and Creativity. So fantastic lineup. Welcome to all our speakers on that. Format today, we are going to have a little bit of a presentation, and because we've got the global expert in the circular economy, it's going to be Ms. Long that gets us started here. She'll speak for about 15 minutes. Of course, the panelists, all the other panelists will tell what they've been working on in their area and how it fits together, and in reaction to Jessica, and then we'll have some time for questions. So please, Jessica, if you can hear me, you can put your presentation up, and we're all anxious to hear what you have to say.
Great. Thank you so much, Andrew. And thank you, Andrew and Emmanuel, for the introduction and for the offer to join you today. Excuse me, my voice is a little bit hoarse this morning. But it's a pleasure to join all of you, and completely agree with Coyote's introduction as well. I think this is such an important topic and one that is important both for Nigeria and for the world. So quite excited for this discussion. I will do a quick overview. I was asked to just do a kind of a one-on-one presentation on circular economy and what it means for sustainable and economic development. But we have such an amazing panel, so I want to make sure that I leave quite a bit of time both for the panel and for the overall Q&A and discussion with this group. So I'll go ahead and jump right in. I think we heard a lot, of course, from Coyote in terms of the overall what is circular economy and why do we need it, but just a bit more information for this group as to why we need a different type of production, consumption, and economic system. Since the beginning of the first industrial revolution, we've essentially had a one-to-one relationship between economic growth and the use of natural resources, especially scarce natural resources. And as a result, today, we are using about 1.75 planets, right? Meaning we are using almost 2 times as much of the planet's resources as it can regenerate every year. By 2050, when we have over 9 billion people on this planet, we're going to be at about 3 to 4 planets, right? So using 3 to 4 planets worth of resources every year, clearly that is unsustainable. And I don't think looking at Mars or other planets is really the solution that we're looking for. It's also, in addition to being this huge environmental problem, and you heard a lot earlier about why it's such a huge environmental impact, it's also an economic problem. We know, for example, that food waste costs about $940 billion a year, right? Just in wasted food. About 95% of plastic packaging value is lost. Just think about everything that gets created and put into packages and thrown away. It's a huge economic problem. And we also know it's a societal problem. We heard a lot about the Sustainable Development Goals earlier. We know that all of these issues with our current models of consumption and production have a disproportionate negative impact on women, children, and those experiencing poverty through things like air pollution, air quality, polluted rivers and waters, water and sanitation, and overall health and livelihoods. So huge issue from an environmental, economic, and societal perspective. So why is our current system not working? And I think, again, you heard a little bit earlier from Coyote around why the current system doesn't work. So our current linear system of production and consumption is essentially take, make, waste, right? We take materials from the ground, we make things out of them, with products, we use them, and then when we're done, we get rid of it, we dispose it, or we waste it. That's our very simple take, make, waste type of system today. And what we find is that is very wasteful. And there's 4 types of waste that I've listed here that I'm hoping we can think about throughout the conversation today. The first one is wasted resources. So it's materials or inputs that cannot be regenerated or that are toxic or can't be reused or recycled. Wasted capacity, it's products and assets that are not fully utilized across their entire life cycle. So think about warehouses that aren't completely full or trucks that aren't completely full, right? I have a chainsaw for some reason in my house that I think I've used once in the last 10 years. So think about all the stuff that you have that doesn't actually get used fully. Wasted life cycles, for example, our cell phones. The average person disposes or changes their mobile phone every 18 months. But phones are actually meant to last 4 or 5 years. So we're not using the full life cycle of our products, our clothing, our furniture, everything around us. And then wasted embedded value. I mentioned that mobile phone. When we're done with that mobile phone, most of the times it sits in a drawer or gets donated or thrown away, but we don't actually think about the valuable materials within that phone, right? The copper, the aluminum, the rare earth minerals that are within it. So lots of embedded value in our products, tons of waste, right? That really could be used in some other capacity. So what would it look like if we changed instead to a circular model? So instead of take, make, waste, we go to take, make, take, make, take, make, take, make, right? Essentially, you design waste out of your entire system. Waste becomes something we don't even think about anymore because everything has value. And some of the key principles that you see here, again, we'll talk about throughout the day today as well. The first one is that waste should be designed out entirely, right? The goal isn't to have waste and then do something better with that waste. The goal is to be in a scenario or in a system where everything has use and it could go back into my system, right? And that gets to the second part, which is when products are at the end of use, not necessarily end of life, but at the end of use, it can be looped back into our system, or lots of little mini loops back into different systems. This gets us to a point where growth is really decoupled from that use of natural resources, especially scarce natural resources, right? So it's breaking that chain where I will no longer need 1.75 planets or 3 to 4 planets to maintain our lifestyles or to continue consumption and growth. I now can have a one-to-one relationship, where I'm constantly regenerating and regrowing. And again, keeping those materials, those natural resources, especially scarce resources, in productive use as long as possible. And it's not just about the environment, as I mentioned. I come from an economics background. I come from a business world. It's also about money. It's about competitiveness for your company, for your country, for your region, for your organization. And it's about capturing a significant amount of value. Our research has found that there is at least $4.5 trillion value at stake by moving from linear to circular economies. 4.5 trillion by 2030, right? So just in the next 10 years. And honestly, this is a really conservative number. And I'll get a bit more into those details as we go through the next few slides. There's 3 main points that I'm going to go through just in the next few minutes. Again, I'm not going to drain these slides because I want to make sure we have time to talk. But the handbook that Andrew mentioned, we published a book earlier this year called the Circular Economy Handbook. And it's really meant to be that, a handbook. It's meant to be almost a how-to guide to transform your company, your industry, your organization, your country from linear to circular. And there's 3 main parts to it. The first is setting the foundation. Where are we now? What are the models out there? What's the role of technology? Where do we need to be? What does this mean for each industry? So we look at 10 different industries, and then how do we get there? How do we actually pivot our organization from linear to circular? So I'm just going to touch a little bit on each of these, but again, leaving lots of room for conversation. So where are we now? As I mentioned, the desire is to move from linear to circular, right? Go from take, make, waste to take, make type of models. We found that there are 5 key business models, circular economy business models, that will help us get there. And I'm going to go through them at a very high level on the slide. 2 of those business models, the one that you probably see on the left-hand side, are focused on production, and 3 are focused on consumption. So the 2 that are focused on production are circular inputs and resource recovery. So I mentioned earlier that there's a lot of wasted resources, right? So those toxic, non-renewable, non-regenerative resources. Circular inputs is all about using renewable resources and using things that are meant to be recaptured and regenerated and recycled and put back into our systems. So think about renewable energy, think about bio-based products, right? Think about things that are meant to be recycled or reused or upcycled. That gets us to that second model, resource recovery and production, which is all about, at the end of the use of that product or that service, taking those materials back, recovering those materials, right? So it might include that embedded values. So if I have a cell phone or a mobile phone, it's taking out all that unique materials so that I can reuse it back into new products or into the same product and service. On the right-hand side, I mentioned there are 3 models focused on consumption. And again, this is all primarily focused on the consumer, but very important for business to be creating these models. The first one is product as a service, and I'll get into a few examples of these later, but this is all about moving from a product being a widget or a thing that I own to a product being a service and getting the service out of that thing. So for example, Michelin tires, very few people actually want to own a tire, right? You buy a tire for your vehicle so that you can get to point A to point B. So they've actually moved to a tires as a service model, where you're essentially buying the mileage, right, that you're driving versus buying the tire. And at the end of your use of that tire or the vehicle, you return it to Michelin so that they can reuse it and put it back into their systems, into new tires or into other products. Product use extension is a critical part of product as a service, but can also be its own model. This is essentially extending the life of products so that they can last longer and so that they can be upgraded when you want to upgrade a certain part. So again, I keep going back to my mobile phone because I think so many of us, use that every day. Imagine if you could just take out the camera in your mobile phone and switch it for a new camera when you wanted one, as opposed to getting a new phone, right? So it's creating a modular product so that I can just replace or repair that one device. We see a lot of clothing companies and furniture companies embracing this model as well, helping their customers repair devices or upgrade their products and services versus throwing it away and getting a new one. And then finally, sharing platforms. I think we all know things like Uber, Airbnb, Yodel, and others that allow us to share those products and services, right? So I mentioned earlier that I have a saw for some reason in my house. Probably don't need that all the time. Maybe I need it once every couple of years. So instead of buying a saw, could I have just shared it, gone to a sharing platform? If I have a car that isn't used every day, could I have just shared my vehicle with others as well? So these 5 business models we think are critical to moving us from a linear to circular economy. Several different enablers throughout this, and again, I'm not going to go through this in detail. We looked at over 1,500 case studies when we were putting this together, and I think there are about 300 or so in the book. The one that I will mention on this one that is super critical, and I think will be quite important for Nigeria, are the disruptive technologies. So that the impact of 4th industrial revolution technologies, physical technologies, digital technologies, and biological technologies are going to be critical to helping us make that transition from linear to circular. And then I'm just going to give a couple of additional examples, just to bring it to life a bit more. I mentioned Michelin, for example, as tires as a service. I think Phillips is another great example of a company that is adopting circular economy and using technology to make that happen. So same kind of thing, very few people want to actually own a light bulb, right? How many people like want to own a light bulb and cherish their light bulb? They don't, they actually want light. Right? So instead of selling you a light bulb, Phillips is moving towards selling you the service that lighting provides. And as you can imagine, for them, it's great because they maintain customers for longer term. They have a relationship with you now to provide a service rather than a thing. And for customers, it's great because the light's going to last much longer. Phillips is incentivized to creating better, longer lasting light bulbs. And at the end of life, they can take those back and again, repurpose them and reuse them in their system, rather than having it end up in a landfill. I talked about my mobile phone a lot. I love these two robots that that Apple has. They have both one called Liam, one called Daisy, which is it's a robot essentially to take apart your mobile phone and recover that valuable embedded material that I mentioned earlier, so that those materials can be reused in their products. The other key part of what Apple is doing here with this technology is not just putting technology in place. They've put in an entire system to actually collect back that material and provide incentives for consumers to do it, right? So it's not just about creating the cool tech. It's also about making sure you have the right process in place. I mentioned biotechnologies. I love anything that deals with waste and biotechnologies, and I think there's a lot that comes with bio-waste and ways in which we can convert hazardous waste and hazardous wastewater into both clean water and clean energy. Cambrian innovation is a great example of this on an industrial scale, right? Again, bringing together biotechnologies, physical technologies, and digital technologies to create good new product, meaning waste, creating new water and energy from what was waste, biohazardous waste. Finally, I'm just going to say, and I won't go through this in detail, this applies to every sector. And in our book, we look through 10 different industries. But if you go industry by industry, again, if I'm looking at oil and gas, ICT, retail, consumer goods, whatever it might be, tons of opportunities. And all you have to do is map out the industry, similar to what you see on this slide. You map out the industry and you look for those pockets of waste across each industry, and then you translate that into value. Right, so here's an example for oil and gas. As you can see, huge amounts of waste and therefore opportunity when I'm looking at transportation and refining processes, the extraction process within oil and gas, lots of waste. And then the use itself, kind of the energy and water intensity of electricity generation, huge amounts of waste and therefore huge amounts of value. Another slightly different example, the ICT industry, both on the side of products, so ICT devices, but also when you look at things like servers and data centers and server farms, huge amounts of waste from the product level, again, when recovering that valuable materials and minerals within products, but also in terms of just the energy footprint, the sheer amount of energy and water and electricity that's used in the creation of and maintenance of our technology products. So finally, just wanted to mention in terms of making that pivot, it sounds great to talk about going from linear to circular, but we recognize that it's not always easy to do so. So oftentimes for organizations, we recommend 3 steps. The first is transform your existing value chain. So as I mentioned, just map out your value chain, look for those big pockets of waste across the value chain, and just look for ways to make it more efficient, reduce that waste, reduce that leakage, and look to really tighten things up. The second is growing your core business organically with circular offerings. So for example, in the Phillips or the Michelin example, how can I take my tires and my lighting and turn that into a circular model? So using my core business to make a change. And then finally, looking for disruptive growth opportunities. So if I'm Phillips, if I'm already in people's homes providing lighting, are there new opportunities for me to employ circular business models, now that I already have that connection with the consumer, with my supply chain, with my broader set of stakeholders. And doing so, of course, requires changing all parts of your organization, clearly looking at how my operations are set up, what my products and services are, especially the design of those products and services, looking at my broader ecosystem. And then this fourth piece, culture and organization, I think always gets overlooked, but it's so critical, which is looking at what are the behaviors I might need to change within my own organization. Do I need to change the incentive structures, right? So that it's not how many widgets are you selling, but how much value or how much service are you providing, that type of thing. It also might include organizational or cultural changes on the consumer side, right? How do I get my consumers to start adopting circular models of consumption rather than getting used to just buying and owning things? It's a huge amount of change across all four of these buckets. So finally, I'll just end it with this, which is just, I guess, high level summary, $4.5 trillion value at stake in the next 10 years. So we're talking about real money here. Lots of technologies across these 5 different business models that we could be adopting and deploying to accelerate this move from linear to circular. And then finally, as was mentioned at the very beginning, this is not just an environmental issue, but it is an environmental issue. And we have really no time to waste to deal with these massive issues that are caused by our current models of production and consumption that we're all feeling today. So an environmental issue, an economic issue, and a societal issue. So with that, Andrew, maybe I'll hand it back over to you and I'll stop.
No, thank you, Jess. I think that's, we set the bar high for you to talk. We had the world's leading expert in this area. Just fantastic stuff. I'm struck listening to you. I mean, I did my graduate work in economics in the 1880s, and I have to apologize to everyone on the webinar for the disservice economics has done to the world. I mean, we had a starting point that we had an infinite number of planets, which is not true. And I mean, I think one of the reasons that it's been a bit of a struggle to get this thinking across is the inertia created in the kind of economic and financial systems we have. But I think it's gathering momentum. People are realizing that the economic models that we've used to date are just simply won't work in the future. And of course, I'm trusting in young people like Jess and others to really accelerate this transition. Of course, Jess is talking on a global level. She's been to Africa, been to Nigeria, but most of the book is the global level. But as I promised, I've got Race on board to come get her title right again, Executive Secretary, Food and Beverage Recycling Alliance in Nigeria. I think there's a lot going on, Race, that people want to hear about, that your group is doing, both what they've been doing and what the future holds in this area. And solid waste is an area that we don't always pay enough attention to, but it's hugely critical in the circular economy. Race, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Can we see you?
I can.
Is your video on, or are you just gonna do
is.
this without? Okay.
My video is on.
All right, go ahead, please, Horacio. We're listening.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew, and thank you, FC4S, for inviting me here, and also for PwC. I'm very excited to be here to share what we are doing at the Food and Beverage Recycling Alliance, and I hope at the end of today we'll be able to know more about the Alliance and then the opportunities that are herein. Thank you. So the Food and Beverage Recycling Alliance was set up in 2018 as a producer responsibility organization for the food and beverage industry. So it's actually private sector driven and is set out to ensure that we manage the post-consumer packaging waste in the environment. We know that ideally for each industry or each manufacturing company, they have a way of managing industrial waste. But then when it goes out to the consumer and then they use the product, what happens to it? It either ends up in the environment or it ends up in the wrong place. And that's what Jessica was talking about when we're going from the use, take, and then we dispose. Now, going into the background of this, we have talked a lot about the generation of waste in Nigeria, especially. With the growing population, we know that only 30% of that waste generated in Nigeria is collected. And then 10% of it is recycled. So what happens to the 90%? And that's a lot of resource that is not being put to good use. And then from the waste that is generated, about 23% of that is made up of plastic waste. And mostly globally, 9% of the plastic waste generated is from PET, which is polyethylene terephthalate, which we popularly call plastic bottles in Nigeria. So FIBRA was set up as the extended producer responsibility organization to be able to make that impact in the food and beverage industry. Next slide, please. Next. Okay. So just a brief on the members we have. Currently, we have 13 members, and it was actually founded by some pioneer members. The pioneer members are the major multinationals, and then finally, we now have some other members joining, and to date, we have 13 members. So I'll go on to the main crux of today, which is from linear towards the circular economy. Jessica has talked a lot about the linear economy and how we can transform into the circular economy. I'm going to use this illustration on this slide to explain further. So we have the extended producer responsibility, which places a responsibility on producers and manufacturers to ensure that they are responsible for the whole life cycle of their product, starting from the design and ending up in recycling, so that it goes back into the system. And then for recycling, we need to ensure that it goes back into the system and then is not disposed. So when it goes back into the system, it actually completes the circular economy. Using the second diagram here, I want to use the bottles as an example to illustrate what happens in the food and beverage industry. So when you have the pellets, which are going to be used to form the preforms that gets into the bottles. So this is the process that it goes through. When it gets to the bottle as the packaging material, then your finished goods are put into it. Ideally, from the linear economy, it either goes to be disposed, just like Jessica earlier said. But now, how do we transform that into the circular economy? So instead of going to the finished goods to be disposed or just left into the environment to cause environmental impacts in the environment, we can actually collect the waste. So when you collect the waste, they are called recyclables. And then that waste can actually be processed into RO-PET flakes. RO-PET flakes means recycled PET flakes. And when it is put into PET flakes, in the linear system, it's either thrown away or is used for another use. But then when it goes into the RO-PET flakes, it can be used for other applications. But ideally, in the food and beverage industry, the best application will be for it to go back into the bottle. And that's what we're saying. How can we promote that to ensure that it goes back into the bottle? But we know that for it to go back into the bottle, it has to be based on a food grade application. And then that food grade application needs to have a standard, because you understand that once the bottle, the finished goods, or the empty packaging goes into the environment, the quality is not the same. So in order for us to be able to take it back into the system, into the bottle, there has to be a standard. And that standard will be able to encourage food grade application industry. And currently in Nigeria, we have that standard that was approved by the Standard Organization of Nigeria, which will be able to create investment opportunities for those who want to invest in those areas and in that industry to ensure that we can get the materials from the recycled PET flakes back into the pellet and then goes back into the bottle to ensure that we're not throwing away the resource, we're reusing it and it's putting back into the system, and then we're designing and removing, we're designing it to ensure that it goes back into the system and it is not wasted. Next slide, please. Next. Okay, so this just gives a typical example, a more practical example. No, back. In Europe today, back slide. Yes, thank you. In Europe today, in two countries I've highlighted in this slide, in Netherlands and Norway, they are using 100% recycled plastic bottles. Remember that in the previous presentation we had from Jessica, even from the design stage, which is the beginning of the value chain, the design stage, we need to be able to design for recyclability. Once we're able to design for recyclability, that means it can go back into the system and it can be reused. So in 2005, Coca-Cola launched, one of our members, launched the first bottle-to-fiber recycling operation in Nigeria in partnership with Alchem. Alchem is a processing facility based in Lagos. And what it was able to do with that was they were able to collect the waste from the environment, that's the plastic waste from the environment, the PET bottles, and use them back into the system to be used for microfibers. And those microfibers were used for pillows locally, mattresses, used for some materials, reused within the system. And that was able to establish over 22 recycling collection centers around Nigeria. That was the beginning of the Food and Beverage Recycling Alliance. That was what brought up the initiation of the Food and Beverage Recycling Alliance. So what happens is when they are collected, they are processed into flakes. That's recycled PET flakes. That's the next step. And when it is done that way, it can either be used for microfibers, but for it to go back into the bottle, go back into the food grade application, the next picture there shows in 2019, in October, where the Standard Organization of Nigeria approved a recycled PET standard for food grade application. So with that standard in place, people can invest in that sector to ensure that from the flakes, it can be used, it can be processed into recycled PET crystals. And then the crystals, based on that, and based on the standard, they can use some certain percentage of that recycled PET crystals into the bottle. So for example, there's one of our members to NGPET recently got funding from IFC to be able to set up that kind of facility. And with that, they'll be able to use at least 20 to 30% of the recycled materials back into the bottle. So for us to be able to get to the 100%, we need more of that kind of industry. We need more of that kind of investment in Nigeria so that we can go back into the 100% recycled bottle, and then we can close the loop for circular economy. So that is the future, and that is what we're driving at. Next slide, please. The next slide talks about the opportunities for collaboration. So for us to be able to invest in opportunities or identify opportunities, we have to look at the whole value chain. When you look at the whole value chain of the waste management operations, then you'll be able to identify where you can come in. So for example, the first box talks about the collection and recovery. We know that that is a critical stage because the stock of the materials you collect will determine the quality of what you get. So opportunities for segregation and collection infrastructure, waste to energy or waste to chemicals, PET flakes and recycled PET crystal production, feasibility studies, research and development. That's a key area because for us to be able to set up those infrastructure, we need to have feasibility studies to see what is the collection rate, what is the stream of waste that is being collected in that area, and what kind of infrastructure can be put in place. The next one is policy formation, dialogue, and partnership. There are lots of policies coming up. We already have the EPRO policy, but it needs to be enforced more to ensure that more food and beverage companies come into the sector and come into the alliance to be able to fund these operations. And then opportunities for impact funding to be able to support these activities, and then opportunities for international partnerships. Lastly, community awareness, engagement, and advocacy. We know that we need to create more awareness. For example, this webinar is an opportunity to create that awareness, to tell people that there is a value that the packaging material has. Instead of putting it in the environment, instead of disposing it, it can be put back to use to be able to close the loop. How do we have community engagement? We have community engagement programs. We have gone to over 25 communities to be able to go to the grassroots and talk to people in the community to know that there's a value of this waste and it can be used to put to good use. We need more adverts, media campaigns, and we need more corporate social responsibility that are targeted towards this area. So those are the opportunities that can be found in it. Then lastly, just to round up, we know that for sustainable development, we need to have social benefits, economic benefits, and environmental benefits. There are disruptive growth opportunities in these sectors. And then if we look into the value chain, we'll be able to identify where we can come in and where we can enhance it. One of the key things that FIBRA is set out to do, that's the Food and Beverage Recycling Alliance, is to enhance the waste management operations. So in the different parts of the value chain, how do we enhance these operations that are already existing? According to the presentation Jessica made, how do we scale up these existing opportunities? How do we scale up these existing small industries to be able to ensure they can have more impact, more environmental impact, more social impact, and more economic impact, so that Nigeria will be able to transform from the linear economy to the circular economy? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Race. Fantastic presentation. I mean, I really took a few things away from that. First, it was very exciting to see that SAN has taken the step for approval of food grade PET. That's a big step forward on that. I mean, the fact that this is private sector driven. I mean, people who listen to my talking about the economy, I always use the term the self-organizing nation. The private sector has taken upon itself to drive this. I mean, one piece of this that's always been important to me too is it really does, though, the collection system puts cash in the hands of the bottom of the pyramid, right? So that really makes an economic difference as well to many people there. So it benefits all the way around. It's great to see that the circular economy is actually happening under your leadership already in Nigeria. So thank you so much for that. And then finally, just there are opportunities. So those who are listening in the webinar today, part of our webinar today, there are real business opportunities out there. So I'm gonna, before I turn to Christian, just to quickly, questions are coming in. First question is quite technical about polyester synthetic fibers. A very good question about whether Nigeria exports waste. We'll come to the questions in a little while. Hopefully we'll get through as many as we're able to. But Christian, I think people want to hear from you about what Daystar is doing, the impact it's having, as I mentioned in the opening remarks, not just in Lagos and Abuja, but across the entire nation, across the whole region, and how the energy solutions fit into the whole circular economy thinking.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and a big thank you to FMDQ and the Financial Center for Sustainability for setting up today's session and for having me. So thanks a lot for this. Now, I think when we started working in Nigeria more than 10 years ago, we were very often pointed to the fact that Nigeria's industry, Nigeria's companies were essentially running on diesel generators. And as we went along and started more and more to understand how the industry in Nigeria works, we found out that Nigeria stands really out in burning more than 10 billion liters of diesel annually for self-generating energy. Now, Jessica pointed out that one big theme of moving from linear towards a circular economy is to stop wastage. Now here, to dimension again the wastage that you have in Nigeria, 10 billion liters of diesel, more than $15 billion spent annually on importation of diesel and diesel equipment. Now, what it does to the country, as only one example for the prevailing linear economy principle, is to produce an enormous pollution, both in the bigger cities, as well as contributing to overall global CO2 emissions. So being a real burden for everybody who lives in Nigeria, but also secondly, producing one of the highest power costs in the world. Now, we are saying that you can't build an economy, you can't create jobs by violating actually some fundamentals, which are, if I would summarize, that you can't build an economy on the back of a diesel generator. So against this background, we have founded Daystar Power. Daystar Power is concentrating on providing energy solutions to Nigerian industrial and commercial customers. And what it means is that we provide typically solar system backed up with energy storage systems, all targeting to, number one, reduce the energy cost, number two, to provide reliable energy, and number three, to provide clean energy. Now, we are not the only one who are doing this, but I think we are just observing a great trend to move in one important topic of the economy from centralized, very highly costly, unreliable solution to a decentral power supply that actually meets those criteria of actually allowing Nigerian companies to compete on par, on one level ground with their international peers. So it was an interesting journey actually when we started, because we started by actually working with a lot of the Nigerian and West African banks, and we have now expanded also to industrial customers. We are currently in more than 30 states in Nigeria, and please don't ask me which are the 6 that we aren't, but I'm assured that from the team that we capture the other 6 very soon as well. We have approximately 100 people, and most importantly, a very strong backbone of engineers that run our projects and service the sites. But the key idea behind this example on how to move from linear to circular economy was actually to try to use innovative solutions to address, in this case, the important issue of energy shortage. And the way how we do this is that we combine some of the most advanced equipment, but also use a digital backbone to further optimize our system. Think about it like that you have in Nigeria a common practice to typically not only use diesel generators, but to also dramatically oversize it, to dramatically waste energy. Jess has brought the example of Phillips, one company that globally commits to circular economy, and she showed this light bulb. Yeah, that light bulb is not in a Nigerian banking hall. That light bulb is not there, but typically is there. It's too bright, it's definitely too cold, and the light bulbs have to be replaced after only a year. So you see, there's a combination of a lot of wastage that produces cost, and it's at no advantage for anybody. Now, when it comes to the digital aspect of it and using more innovative solution, then I found it fascinating that currently out of our network operating center in Lagos, so our company is in Ilopejo, that out of our network operating center, we not only control with real-time data all our systems across Nigeria. I think the most northeast would be in Maiduguri, so kind of the whole country, but also the systems in Ghana, Senegal, Togo, and soon additional countries to further optimize how we deploy resources and how we manage the systems. Now, one interesting aspect is that it seems that all the topics that are discussed today somewhere have something in common. When I listen to Agarese and her explanation on food, for instance, then I think there was a lot of initiatives around avoiding wastage and making best use of the embedded value that is, in this case, for instance, in the plastic. Now, it will not surprise you when I say that not only Agarese is working from her recycling extended producer responsibility approach with the likes of Coca-Cola, but it happens to be also one of our customers where we just installed 4 solar systems to provide them with renewable energy. Now, what comes next actually in that journey? I think what you will see that the country will gradually move towards a decentral power provision. The country will go to renewable energy, and the country will actually solve gradually power issues. But that's not going to happen with a centralized approach that is prevalent today. And it's not going to happen because the new solutions that are circular and that do save resources are actually cheaper than burning fossil fuels. Now, I think we're just at the beginning of something, because I found it so fascinating when we, out of our office in Ilopejo, Lagos, started a study with Cambridge University on actually extending our systems towards new applications And one thing that we find very fascinating is the application of green hydrogen that makes good use of the phenomenal power that is available in Nigeria when producing a new energy storage system. Now, Daystar Power, yes, that was one company that we founded approximately 3-4 years ago, but it's actually not the only company that we founded. So under an umbrella of Sunray Ventures, and I just would like to add 2 more examples of why we are fascinated, among others, by the work of Jess and her colleagues around describing actually products as a service, as an approach. You know, Jess mentioned the approach of not only selling a product and then waiting until the end of the lifetime and then throwing it away, or more often actually not using it fully, but an approach whereby you use product as a service and deploy assets, deploy product at a client site and make sure that you optimize the entire lifespan of the product, you maintain properly, and in the end, yes, you will refurbish, you recycle those elements that are not working. Therefore, we refer to our business as solar as a service and not as selling solar equipment. We're not doing this. We are selling power, and as part of this, it's solar or power as a service that we're selling to optimize actually the resources. Now, I said another example, in the sister companies of ours, we have started to invest into electronic recycling. Therefore, what earlier was referred to as these 2 wonderfully named robots from Apple that just showed us. So we had a little bit more hands-on approach when we tested this approach in our warehouse in the Lopegio. And you know, to be honest, not very often we've had an iPhone coming to us, but we really looked at ways to already start understanding how we can actually deal with electronic waste. Because if you have a solar company and you're really enthusiastic about it, then you should also think what is 5 years down the road when actually you will take the first products back. Now, solar panels, they last for 10, 15 years, but inverter technology and other electronic equipment, we are already thinking now what to use at end of life cycle. And therefore, our company GC Recycling is there to actually establish also a circular economy approach for the power, the solar industry. One last example, again, from one of our sister companies. We are actually also in equipment. And we noticed that actually there's a huge problem also after having worked in industries ourselves, that a lot of the equipment vehicles, for instance, in Nigeria, still run on diesel, on petrol, and that you have a high prevalence of actually unused equipment because it's not properly maintained. Again, similar approach. Some of my colleagues have founded actually and have established a partnership for warehouse equipment that we offer on a product as a service basis. Again, a forklift that is digitally managed to actually optimize the cost for the clients, as well as to reduce any sort of wastage throughout the life cycle. So the whole idea that is actually promoted in the Circular Economy Handbook of thinking about products as a service, we found very fascinating in the Nigerian setup when we really want to optimize the resources that we deploy.
Okay, so Christian, let me just stop you there because we're running out of time. We're not going to get enough time for questions. There's one question I want to pose to you. Go on. But I think you've really highlighted, or Racy's highlighted, that the circular economy is not something in the future for Nigeria. It's something that's happening now. And just fantastic listening to you. But quick question, 15 seconds. Is Daystar considering food waste to power?
Yeah, definitely. All sources to power, and we're looking in food to power. We're not yet there, but it's a fantastic opportunity. And we would like to also speak with our colleagues who are more involved in the food sector already. So absolutely, yes, Andrew.
Okay, fantastic. And thank you so much for being part of developing Nigeria outside of the Lagos Abuja bubble. Okay, we've got Bankole up now. Bankole, your climate is in your title, but the truth is you're just everywhere. You're like Batman. So I left you to last to kind of, you listen to all this, you know all this. What are your thoughts?
Thank you very much first for having me. I like the fact that you say that I'm everywhere and I'm trying to solve everything. But again, I think it's going to be sheer madness if I really think that I could solve everything. But for what I've heard so far, I really think that the need to improve the viability of value chains, I think is going to give us that chance to be able to scale up whatever possibility that is available within the circular economy, particularly in a country like Nigeria. Knowing that for every time we see a new opportunity, there are quite a number of people who are quick to dive into that same opportunity or that same space. So I think that from what I've heard so far from Arese, Jessica, and also Christine, I really think that there's a whole value chain of possibilities in terms of businesses that can really harness the possibilities, right? So when you look at what Arese said around from the side of suppliers, from the supply side. So you see that from those who pick, from those who source, and also the logistic angle of things when it comes to plastic, that is, there's already a valuation of about 3 possible businesses that can happen, right there. We know that bigger companies who would like to reduce their cost of production also need to look at how they can improve their production process. I think that in every industry that we can find in this country currently, there's a chance to be able to improve the possibility of circular economy opportunities, right? Whereby SMEs or startups who can develop innovative ideas or innovative processes can also harness some of these gaps. The inability of getting major data is seen as an impediment to the scaling of some of these early stage ideas. But we also think that for many Nigerians who are playing within this space, they have seen beyond just some of the possibilities that are available in the circular economy model. So just before seeing the presentation from Jessica, we'll be studying a few concepts on circular economy loop from Finland. And we think that the model which Finnish government also is using to drive mainstream circular economy models in their economy is something that we can also leverage on. So when we look at manufacturing codes and manufacturing standards and also manufacturing processes, I think it can also help us understand that look, the need to be able to open up this this value chain and driving for more investments gives us that chance to be able to create a whole new economy that can end up boosting the Nigerian economy a lot further. And so driving these investments, right, we know that in different countries, what has been understood as climate, as circular economy investments might a bit differ from what we find here in Africa. But particularly in a country like Nigeria, they've been an unstructured market in the circular economy market for quite a long time, not just only in plastics, but also around food and also around, fashion accessories and even into e-waste and also metal waste. So they've been largely an underground community who have been driving for the growth of these things, right? And what we find out again is that for the fact that many of these underground communities are picking some of this waste, right? They use also some crude method in converting this waste to new material that can be used by other industries. So imagine the guys at the aluminum circular economy sector. When they do the smelting, how do they do it? How great? Because again, we cannot be saving in one part and then be adding, also in another part. So we need to look at how we can improve the infrastructural value chain, right? On how we can make sure that those who need some of this resources as big companies, how do they harness, how do they access it? Those who are already playing within this unstructured or rather underground market, how are they handling this process of converting this waste into new resources? I think that one will also help us see the economies of scale, or rather the economic viability of investing in some of these businesses. I think that there are quite a number of startups that have gone through our process who equally want to see how they can convert many of these waste that we see into new materials and into functional circular economy driven materials. So for instance, we have some guy from EcoLife who says that he can turn old car parts into tricycles powered by battery or solar. Now we can already see what that process is. There's already a huge waste of metal that we can see in different parts of the country. And once we understand how that value chain is going to work, right, and the kind of infrastructure that we can further on invest in, I think it gives us that chance to be able to drive in a little bit more investment and also open up the market for businesses who are at that stage that they need resources, and how clean and how structured is the production of that resources. I think the need to also create a mainstream investment opportunity around circular economy will also help us see how we can cover up that loop. And it has seen that in the circular economy model, just like Jessica also shared, is that the linear doesn't work. So we have to put this in a loop, right? And in driving this loop, we need to know who are the critical stakeholders, which we have identified with APRON, FIBRA, and CO. But again, how do we build the smaller businesses that can scale up the possibilities within this place? Because again, this is where we see where those jobs will come in, and where those green where those green jobs will come in, and where the green skills that we need to build will also come in. And what we're also going to find in the next few years is going to be a direct conversion, if you permit me to say. So there'll be conversion of people who are working in other sectors that are not circular driven, also changing into that circular driven. So what are the different knowledge the knowledge categories that we need to share within this space? So I believe that to be able to do this sustainability, to be able to drive this this sustainability development critically, we need to look at those gaps in that circular economy, and how do we fill them, and what are the possibilities that we can find, how do we scale them, and also how do we manage those processes properly. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Bankole. Very, very helpful. Again, just to stress on Bankole's comments, I mean, for those in the private sector who want to be in the private sector, there are incredible opportunities to create the circular economy in Nigeria as a business. And Jessica put up some of those big numbers. We're kind of in the lightning round as we get squeezed for time. So a few quick questions. Jessica just answered one in the chat. I'll ask you, Bankole, someone to ask the question: is there a real recycling company in Nigeria, or is Nigeria just exporting waste? And I guess I'll add, if it's exporting waste, this is exporting waste to nowhere.
Exactly. So I think you saw what Aresa shared. I don't know if that picture can come up also, where there are major recycling companies who are doing things in different ways. We know that there was a workshop we attended where Coca-Cola says that they are working with, I think, Lafarge or so, to be able to build, to be able to see how they can infuse more plastic into their cement processes. So I think that many companies, right, are creating their own model and processes to how they can do recycling, which again still gives a lot of more opportunities for people who like to play within that space. I think that the recycling industry that we have in Nigeria, again, plays on different ways. Many are still very crude at this moment. By crude, I mean that they are semi-automated, or rather not even automated, entirely, right? But being able to look at that infrastructural possibility, investment to automate these processes will help us see some form of larger scale of recycling opportunities, right? Because that's when we see that the market has been opened. I think that in many sectors, right, particularly the plastic, you find more recyclers in the plastic sector than in any other part of any other recycling sector that you can find in Nigeria.
Okay, fantastic. Yep. Okay, so let me there was one, not a question, but I think a fantastic comment that I'm very much in favor of, is that we could actually save a lot of energy usage if we dressed in the climate and dressed in proper clothes and not wore a necktie that is completely inappropriate to the climate. So again, I'll put out the plea there for less Western dress and more clothes like I'm wearing. And people can follow my tailor on Twitter on that. So we're really out of time now. I'm sorry we can't take more questions. I think it's been a fantastic lineup. I want to thank Bankole, RSA, Christian, and Jessica particularly for coming from abroad, at least in a virtual sense on this. I think people can take away there is so much activity in this area already, but just huge opportunity over the next decades that those that are committed to Nigeria and West Africa to build the circular economy, and you can do good while making money. I'm going to ask at this point that the Executive Secretary of the Financial Center for Sustainability Lagos, and my dear friend and brother Emmanuel, make some closing comments.
Thank you very much, Andrew. This has been a very interesting session. I want to start by saying a very big thank you to FMDQ, to the chairman of FC4S, Mr. Bola Onodele Koko, for the opportunity to set up this center and to partner with great institutions like PwC, led by Dr. Andrew Levine. I want to thank Jessica. I want to thank my friend Kristen. He's been supportive of everything we've been doing since 2014 in FMDQ, and it's always a privilege to have him work with us, to support us in our various initiatives. I want to thank Bankole and RSA also for the interventions. I want to also thank all our support staff within FMDQ and FC4S, the people from the IT division, Korede, Shola, the guys from communications, Yuzi, Rosemary. Thanks to Kodi, especially, for taking our time. She's super busy coordinating the affairs of FMDQ's 4 or 5 subsidiaries as the GCOO. Thanks, Kodi, for taking time out. And thanks to Dr. John MacArthur of Brookings Institute, who also helped us to have access to Jessica. And I encourage everyone to go for Jessica's book. Is the authoritative book on the subject of circular economy, and it's very, very informative. She just presented a synopsis of the book. It's much deeper and wider than what she presented today. I want to thank especially, if you look at the list of participants, you'll see that the special advisor to the Central Bank Governor on Sustainability is in attendance. Dr. Aisha Mahmood, thanks for joining us. We hope to work with you more on this. This is area of expertise, and we hope to get you involved in other things that we're doing from the FC4S angle. So once again, thanks to everyone. We will inform the House of the next topic for discussion. Dr. Andrew always comes up with very interesting areas of focus in this webinar series, and we're enjoying you to join us next time when we have the opportunity to share our thoughts and ideas with you. Thank you very much. Thanks for attending. If I didn't mention you, please forgive me. I'd like to close with this point from Jessica's presentation. It's not just about the environment, it's also about the economy. $4.5 trillion of economic opportunity out there. So please just make sure that you tune in, focus your attention on the value chain opportunities and see how you can tap them, how you can benefit from them, and how we can save the world and move from the take, make, dispose to take, make, as proposed by Jessica. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for attending. God bless you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. This brings to a close today's webinar on the circular economy. We hope to see, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.